walls like a song on repeat. If he coughed, my mom would whip up fresh ginger tea. If I had a fever, "You'll be fine by morning, take a nap." His report cards were framed. Mine got misplaced under stacks of junk mail. It wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no slammed doors. "I hate yous." Just absence. Emotional silence. I'd come home from school to find the family at dinner without me. "Oh, we thought you'd eaten already," my dad would say, eyes not even leaving the TV. When Daniel turned 13, he got a party with 30 kids, a rented VR7, and a magician. For my 16th, a quick, happy birthday, before my mom asked if I could mow the lawn before guests arrived for Daniel's cello recital. I wasn't jealous. I was starving. By the time high school ended, the message was loud and clear. Daniel was going places, and I was on my own. He got accepted into a private university. My parents celebrated like he'd won an Olympic gold. Me? I quietly enrolled in community college and picked up my second job. I didn't even tell them. Mornings, I stocked produce at a grocery store. Evenings, I delivered pizzas with a half-broken GPS and a leaky soda bottle rolling under my seat. I became best friends with parking lots. Nights when I couldn't afford the gas to get home, I'd curl up in the back seat of my dented Civic, hugging my backpack and trying to ignore the buzz of mosquitoes and the ache in my lower back. Still, through all that, the exhaustion, the isolation, the skipped meals, I held on to something irrationally beautiful. A dream. I'd stare at streetlights through foggy windows and picture a future. One where I had a real job, maybe an apartment with peeling paint but working heat, and a dog that didn't care about my bank account. I wanted peace more than success. But success wouldn't hurt. I kept grinding, semester after semester. My grades weren't bad, but between shifts and sleep deprivation, they weren't stellar either. I never expected a miracle. I never thought anyone would save me. Then came the weirdest Tuesday of my life. I was halfway through a shift, double parked outside a dentist's office, balancing a pepperoni pizza in one hand and a 2-liter in the other, when a sleek black BMW rolled up behind me. The window slid down, and I saw a face I hadn't seen in almost a decade. "Michael?" the man said, squinting. He looked like an older version of a family photo. Same John, same eyes as my dad, but with better shoes. It was Uncle Rick. The rich one. The one who my parents always said was too arrogant for his own good, and probably cooking the books. He hadn't shown up to a holiday dinner since I was 12. I blinked at him, standing there in my grease-stained polo and name tag. "Uncle Rick?" I said, shifting the pizza box awkwardly. He leaned back in his seat, whistled, and laughed. "Well, damn. You're all grown up. You delivering now?" I nodded, cheeks burning. "Yeah. Just part-time." His smile faded, just a bit. "This your main gig, or?" I shrugged. "2 jobs plus classes." Rick stared at me for a moment, then reached into his wallet and handed me a business card. "Come see me tomorrow," he said. Seriously. I didn't know what was happening yet. But it was the first time in years someone looked at me and didn't see a disappointment. The next morning, I stared at the business card like it was some kind of trap. It was heavy, thick cardstock, the kind you only see in movies or LinkedIn brag posts. Rick Carlton, founder and CEO, StraightX Holdings. It looked like money. Part of me expected him to ghost. Or maybe it was a joke. But something in his voice yesterday had sounded real. Curious. Maybe even concerned. I took the bus downtown, wearing the cleanest clothes I had. Khakis that still fit from high school and a shirt I ironed with a hotel hair straightener in a gas station bathroom once. I didn't know what a CEO's office would smell like, but it sure wasn't garlic knots and sweat. When I stepped into the StraightX building lobby, I felt like I'd entered another universe. Marble floors. Plants that didn't look fake. A receptionist with an earpiece who looked at me like I was a glitch in the Matrix. "Michael?" she said after confirming my name. "Mr. Carlton is expecting you. Elevator to 18. By the time I reached the top floor, I was already sweating. Not with terror, from sheer disbelief. Uncle Rick's office had a glass-walled view of the entire city, and the kind of leather furniture that made you feel unworthy to sit down. He stood when I walked in and shook my hand like I wasn't just his nephew, but someone who mattered. You made it, he said. Coffee? Sure? He poured it himself. No assistant. No dramatic. Have a seat. Lying. Just casual, like we were equals. I gotta be honest, Mike, he said, handing me a mug. I didn't expect to see you hauling pieces. Your dad always talked like you were doing fine. Said you were at school, working on some tech stuff. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. I'm at community college. Work 2 jobs. Sleep in my car half the week. So yeah? Tech stuff. Rick's eyebrows rose. Jesus. He looked genuinely stunned. That's what they let happen to you. I shrugged. I guess they had bigger plans for Daniel. Rick was quiet for a long second, then walked to his desk and grabbed a folder. Well, I've got a summer intern spot that just opened up. Pays well. Nothing fancy at first. Spreadsheets, research, maybe helping with onboarding. But you'd be working under my operations manager. Learn fast, show initiative, and I'll open bigger doors. I stared at him, unsure if this was some elaborate hallucination. Why are you doing this? Rick leaned back, expression soft. Because when I was your age, your grandfather did nothing for me. And I promised myself if I ever saw someone in the family being treated like I was, I'd do the opposite. That hit harder than I expected. No one had ever stood up for me, let alone a relative who barely knew me anymore. I swallowed, blinked a few times, and said, I'll take it. Rick grinned. Good. You start on Monday. Get yourself a decent shirt. We don't do polos with cartoon pizza logos around here. As I left the building, walking past the fountain and shiny black town cars, I caught my reflection in a window. I looked tired, underdressed, and completely out of place. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. Day 1, I walked into the Stratex office looking like a kid who wandered into the wrong building during a school field trip. My thrift store khakis were too short, ankle breezy. My shirt collar wouldn't lie flat no matter how hard I begged it, and my shoes squeaked every step. I sounded like an anxious mouse sneaking across a waxed floor. The receptionist handed me a welcome packet and badge like she was giving me a second chance at life. Welcome aboard, Michael, she said brightly. I smiled back, even though my stomach was doing cartwheels. When the elevator opened on the 18th floor, the difference in air pressure felt psychological. Everyone here walked like they knew where they were going, like they had a favorite sushi place and a stock portfolio. I met Kareem, my direct supervisor, whose voice had the power of 5 espressos and a TED Talk. He wore a button-up that probably cost more than my entire high school wardrobe and socks with ducks on them. Let's not pretend this isn't weird, he said, shaking my hand. Your uncle's a big deal. But I don't do nepotism. I do results. That cool with you? More than cool, I said. Terrified, actually. He laughed. Perfect. You'll do fine. The first few days felt like someone dropped me in a foreign country with nothing but a broken phrase book. People threw around acronyms like they were playing bingo. KPI, ROI, CRM, QBR. I was 2 abbreviations away from crying. But I stayed late. Took notes. Watched how people dressed, spoke, and scheduled their calendars like small gods about me. Rick popped in every couple days, not in a showy. Look at my charity case. Way, but quietly. Need anything? He'd ask, sipping a double espresso that smelled like money. A nap and a brain transplant. I'd say. He always smiled and said, You're already doing better than you think. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. No one had ever told me I was doing okay, let alone better than I thought. From my parents, I was used to hearing things like, try harder, or Daniel would have done it faster. By week 2, something weird happened. I started to like being here. I started to belong. Kareem gave me real projects, not just coffee runs or printer duties, but actual reports to prepare. People asked for my input. One senior analyst even complimented how I formatted a dashboard. I wanted to frame the email. I moved out of my car and into a tiny shared apartment above a bookstore that smelled like dust and old dreams. The first night I slept on a mattress, a real mattress, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because my back wasn't screaming in agony for the first time in months. One night, inspired and maybe a little cocky, I posted a photo on LinkedIn. Just me at my desk, smiling like a sleep-deprived gremlin in a discount button-up. The caption read, Day 30. From sleeping in my car to starting a new chapter. Long road ahead, but finally moving forward. I didn't tag Rick. I didn't at the company. Just a simple, quiet win. The algorithm had other plans. It went modestly viral. Apparently, people love a good underdog story. A recruiter commented. A former professor messaged me. A stranger offered to buy me lunch just to hear the rest of the journey. But the message that made my heart freeze? A text from my mom. Michael, is it true you work for Rick? We saw a post. Why didn't you tell us? I stared at the screen like it had insulted my ancestors. Then the second message. Daniel's asking. He feels really hurt that you didn't share this with us. Right. Daniel feels hurt. However, would the world survive? I didn't answer. Not yet. I was still trying to figure out how I felt, and whether they actually missed me, or just missed what I was becoming. The day after my mom's. Daniel feels hurt. Text, I got a friend request from her on LinkedIn. She hadn't acknowledged my existence on social media for years. Her profile still had one of those default gray silhouettes, and a bio that said, Proud mother of Daniel Blueheart died. No mention of a second son. Then came the messages. So proud of you, sweetheart. We always knew you had potential. You should come for dinner soon. It's been too long. Daniel just launched his campus app. You two could work together, maybe pitch it to your uncle? That last one made me laugh out loud. Like full-body reason laugh. Daniel, who once said smelled like pork, now wanted my help getting his glorified homework assignment in front of Rick. Meanwhile, I was buried in real work. Kareem had looped me into a vendor negotiation, and Rick had started forwarding me emails directly, not just intern tasks, but actual decisions to weigh in on. One afternoon, he waved me into his office after a meeting and pointed to a flowchart I'd submitted. You ever think about full-time, Mike? Post-grad? I blinked. I mean, yeah, but I didn't think I was ready. Rick leaned back, one eyebrow raised. Most people aren't. You learn by doing, but you've got a good head and a sharp eye. You work like someone who's been counted out and knows how to count himself in. That line, I wanted to tattoo it across my ribcage. I left his office that day with an offer letter for a permanent position after graduation. Mid-level ops analyst. Actual salary. Health benefits. Paid time off. I held the paper like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. The next weekend, I went back to my old grocery store. Not to work, just to eat. I bought a soda from the vending machine in the break room and sat where I used to cry between shifts, staring at my name badge, wondering if I'd ever be more than a placeholder in someone else's success story. Now I had my own story, but the family kept poking at the pages. My dad emailed me, which in itself was a miracle since I'm 90% sure he thinks computers are just TVs with typing. The message was short. We're glad you pulled yourself together. Maybe it's time to let bygones be bygones. Come home for Daniel's birthday this Sunday. He'd love to see you. Of course you would. Especially if I showed up in business casual and dropped phrases like Q3 projections and strategic partnerships. I could practically hear the conversation already. Wow, Michael's really turned things around. Yeah, working for Rick of all people. I guess he's finally useful. We always said he just needed a little push. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me they could now show off at parties. And here's the thing. I didn't owe them a single thing. I wasn't the scared kid hoping for scraps of attention anymore. I had a job. A home. A mentor who actually gave a damn. And for once in my life, I had a spine that wasn't made of apologies. When Sunday came, I didn't go to Daniel's birthday. I went for a walk with Rick instead. We got coffee and sat by the water. He didn't push. He just listened. You don't have to let them back in, you know, he said eventually. Blood's not a free pass to your face. I nodded slowly, my hands wrapped around a paper cup of something overpriced in pumpkin spice. I know, I said. I just never thought I'd be the one with the choice. The week after Daniel's birthday, I received a text from him. That alone was weird. Daniel had barely acknowledged me outside of group family chats. The kind where I was usually the only one who didn't get a reply. His message was civil. "Hey man. Long time. Saw your post. Proud of you. Would love to catch up sometime." I stared at it for a long time. No typos, no emojis, just that quiet, calculated tone of someone who was about to ask for something. I didn't answer right away. 2 days later, he followed up. "You know, I've been thinking, maybe we could grab lunch? I'd love to hear how you got in with Uncle Rick. You always had a good head for systems stuff." That part made me laugh. Daniel used to say, "I don't do spreadsheets, that's Mike's thing." In the same tone someone might use to say, "I don't do meth." Now he was calling me a systems guy. I asked Rick about it over coffee. "He's reaching out," I said. "Should I respond?" Rick stirred his espresso and gave me the kind of look therapists probably charge $200 an hour for. "Do you want to?" he asked. That was the hard part. A year ago, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. I'd have crawled through glass just to hear Daniel say something nice. But now I could hear the gears turning behind his words. "I think he wants something," I said finally. Rick nodded. "Probably. People don't like watching someone they underestimated succeed. Makes them uncomfortable." I didn't reply to Daniel. I didn't need to. But the silence didn't last. A week later, my mom called. This time, it wasn't just polite curiosity. Her voice had a rehearsed tone, like she was trying to sound casual, in the know, but kept tripping over her own intentions. "So," she said, "your father and I were talking, and we just think it's amazing how far you've come. You've really grown up, Michael." "Thanks," I said cautiously. "And, well, Daniel's startup is entering this crucial growth phase, you know? He's built such a brilliant app. It connects students to freelance gigs in real time. It's just so modern. Anyway, he's looking to pitch it to real investors. And since you're working with Rick..." There it was. I let the silence hang. "I don't make investment decisions, Mom." "Oh, of course not. But you could, mention it to Rick. Just pass it along. Family helping family. Family helping family. The same family that once forgot to pick me up from school because Daniel had a dentist appointment. The same family that told me to figure it out when I couldn't afford textbooks." I ended the call politely. Then I put my phone on silent and stared out my apartment window for a long time. I was tired. Not in the physical way I used to be, running on 3 hours of sleep and 2 jobs, but tired of being treated like an asset now that I had value. At work, I was thriving. Kareem trusted me with a vendor onboarding project that directly impacted our Q4 operations. I presented in a meeting for the first time, me, the guy who used to sweat through his shirt just asking for time off at the grocery store. But at home, if I could even call it that, the emotional math hadn't changed. I was still a tool, a connection, a means to an end. That night, Rick called me for this. "I've got an invite to a private networking event this Friday," he said. "Small group. Founders, investors, a few ops leads. Want to come?" I hesitated. "Won't that be out of place?" "You're already in the room, Mike," he said. "Time to stop standing in the hallway." I stood in front of my closet, a laughably small one, trying to decide which shirt made me look like I didn't accidentally wander into a millionaire mixer off the street. The only thing hanging that didn't scream, "Intern at Best Buy," was a charcoal blazer Rick had gifted me a few weeks earlier. It still had the tags on. I'd never had anywhere worthy enough to wear it. Until now. The networking event was held at a rooftop venue downtown, the kind of place with champagne that tastes like wealth and tiny hors d'oeuvres you need a translator to pronounce. Everyone looked like they were either about to close a merger or steal a spaceship. Rick met me at the elevator. "Looking sharp," he said. "Nervous?" I nodded. "On a scale of 1 to identity theft?" "Very." He clapped me on the back. "You belong here more than half of them. Just don't say synergy unless it's an emergency." The first 10 minutes were terrifying. I hovered near the cheese platter like it was home base in a game of corporate tag. But then someone asked me about my work, and I answered, cautiously at first, then with confidence I didn't know I had. By the end of the night, I'd swapped business cards with the supply chain director, had a full conversation about logistics AI, and only knocked over one tiny wine glass. Rick watched me the whole time, not like a bodyguard, but like someone who knew exactly how far I'd come. As the crowd thinned, he leaned over and said, "You didn't fake a thing tonight. That's how you know it's real." I smiled. And for once, I believed him. The next morning, reality punched back in the face, in the form of Daniel, standing outside my apartment. I don't know how he found my address. Probably Mom. She never met a boundary she didn't cross like a finish line. He looked exactly like I remembered: designer hoodie, perfect haircut, and the smugness of someone who's never had a bounced check in their life. "Hey," he said like we'd spoken yesterday. "Hope this isn't weird." "It is," I said, not opening the screen door. "Look, I just want to talk. 2 minutes. Please." Against my better judgment, I let him in. He walked around like he was on a real estate tour. "Wow, this is nice. You've really upgraded. I didn't invite you for a walk through." He sat on my couch, and looked at me like we were friends, like he hadn't ignored every struggle I ever had. "So," he said casually, "I've got something to ask. And I wanted to do it face to face. Man to man." I didn't say anything. Just crossed my arms. "My app, freelancing, it's getting traction. Campus buzz. We're beta testing next month. I want to pitch it to Rick, and I figured, since you're in the loop, maybe you could grease the wheels a bit." There it was. He asked. I let the silence stretch. "Look," he added quickly, "I know we weren't always close, but you have to understand, Mom and Dad, they always pushed me so hard. I didn't have it easy either. That was rich. You had a car before I had a mattress," I said. "You had tutors, coaches, every opportunity. And I got ghosted at my own birthday." He winced just slightly. "That was a rough year." "No, Daniel. That was just my life." He looked stunned. Maybe he thought I'd blow over. Maybe he still thought I was that same tired, hungry kid too desperate to say no. But I wasn't. "I'm not your enemy," I said firmly. "If your idea is good, pitch it on your own. I'm not your shortcut." He stood up, his expression sullen. "Wow. So you finally get a whiff of success and now you're too good for your own family?" I stared him down. "No," I said. "I'm finally good to myself. There's a difference." He didn't slam the door on his way out. That would have required conviction. Instead, he left with the same entitlement he walked in with, annoyed the world didn't give him what he asked for. That night, I told Rick what happened. "You did the right thing," he said without hesitation. "People will try to ride your momentum, especially the ones who never helped you build it." I nodded, heart pounding. Drawing a boundary shouldn't feel like war. But when you've spent your whole life being stepped on, even standing still can feel like rebellion. The Monday after Daniel showed up uninvited, I walked into work 10 minutes early. Not because I had anything to prove, but because I finally wanted to be there. Kareem gave me a nod as I passed his office. "You've got that promotion walk," he joked. I laughed. I thought that was just called posture. At lunch, Rick pulled me aside. We went to a little cafe across the street, the kind where coffee is served in glasses, not cups, and everything smells vaguely like truffle oil and tax brackets. "I've been watching you," Rick said between bites of overpriced salad. "You're sharp. You listen. You lead quietly, but people follow." I blinked. "Thanks. That's not a compliment," he replied. "It's a warning, because people are going to notice, which means they'll start testing your voice." I wasn't sure where this was going until he slid a folder across the table. It was a proposal, a full internal project involving our logistics system. And at the bottom, project lead Michael, last name. "You want me to run this?" He nodded. "We'll give you a small team. Nothing huge. But this is yours. Start to finish." It wasn't just a promotion. It was trust. Proof that I wasn't a charity case or a family favor. I had earned this. That night, I walked home slower than usual. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to soak it in. I stopped at a street vendor and bought a falafel wrap, then sat on the steps outside my building like I used to when I couldn't afford groceries. Back then, I ate cold pizza crusts and pretended I wasn't crying. Now, I was sitting under the same streetlight, but I wasn't the same person. The confrontation with Daniel had left a mark, sure. I replayed it in my head a dozen times. Thought about what I could have said differently. Whether I should have been kinder, harsher, colder. But every time I ran through the memory, I landed on the same truth. I didn't owe him softness just because we shared DNA. I didn't owe him anything. That thought scared me less and less every day. Back at work, I hit the ground running. The project Rick gave me wasn't easy. It required coordinating across departments, wrangling data, and figuring out why our vendor chains still had the response time of a dial-up modem. But for the first time in my life, I wanted the hard stuff. It felt like building a future with my own hands instead of begging to be included in someone else's. And people noticed. He gave me his old standing desk. Don't get cocky, I hate sitting. And my inbox went from, "Hey, can you fix this spreadsheet?" to, "Mike, can you lead this call?" One afternoon, I caught my reflection in the office glass during a video conference. Shirt pressed. Hair not terrible. Focused. Confident. And I thought, so this is what it feels like. To not need permission to exist. Rick stopped by my desk at the end of the week. "So," he said, "feel like you're finally on the path?" I nodded. "Yeah. And it's mine. That's the best part." He smiled. "Told you, you had the brain. You just needed a place where people weren't trying to dim the light." We walked up together that evening, past the downtown lights, past the life I used to chase from the outside. And I realized something that made me pause for just a moment. I wasn't chasing anymore. I was choosing. It was a Saturday morning when I got the email. Subject: family brunch. Let's reconnect, Red Heart. Sent by my mom. CC to everyone. Me, Dad, Daniel, some cousins, even Great Aunt Linda who still signs her texts. Love, Aunt Elle. The message was coated in sugar but hollow inside. "We're so proud of how far you've come, Michael. We'd love to have you over, celebrate your success, and just be a family again. No pressure, just brunch and love." I sat there, coffee in hand, rereading the words like they were part of a script I wasn't interested in acting out anymore. The timing was perfect. I just wrapped up the logistics project, ahead of schedule, with glowing feedback from the departments. Kareem gave me a fist bump that actually turned into a hug, and Rick, well, he just nodded and said, "I knew you would. I'd never been anyone's. I knew you would, before." And now here was this email. Like none of it, the years of silence, the dismissiveness, the suddenly opportunistic affection, never happened. I didn't reply right away. I went for a walk. Bought myself a ridiculous pastry from a downtown bakery just because I could. Sat in the park, watching joggers go by with earbuds and perfect lives. Then I went home and opened a blank reply. And I wrote this. Subject: read family brunch. Let's reconnect, Red Heart. Hi, Mom. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate the gesture. But I think what you're hoping to reconnect with isn't really me. It's who I've become. And while I'm proud of who I am now, that version of me wasn't built with your support. He was built in spite of your absence. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done handing out access to people who only show up when it's convenient. I won't be attending brunch. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm busy building a life where I don't have to wonder if I matter. Tell Daniel good luck with his app. Michael. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't refresh my inbox. I didn't even save a copy in my drafts. I hit send and closed my laptop. That night, Rick and I went out for drinks. Nothing fancy, just a corner bar with strong coffee and stronger opinions. We didn't talk about the family. We didn't need to. Instead, he raised his glass to me. To the guy who rewrote his own story, he said. I smiled, tapped my glass to his, and said, to the people who thought they could write me out of it.